Miracle on the Hudson. On January 15, 2009, what began as an ordinary afternoon flight became one of the most remarkable survival stories in aviation history. U.S. Airways Flight 1549, an Airbus A320 carrying 150 passengers and 5 crew members, departed from LaGuardia Airport bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. Just minutes after takeoff, a flock of Canada geese struck both engines, causing a total loss of thrust. With no engine power and no runway within reach, Captain Chesley Sully, Sullenberger and First Officer Jeffrey Skiles were faced with a decision no pilot ever hopes to make: how to bring an airplane safely to the ground when ground was no longer an option. Before everything changed. Inside the cabin, moments before impact, life still felt ordinary. Conditioned air whispered from the vents. A soda can clicked softly against a tray table. Seat belts chimed with polite efficiency. Somewhere down the aisle, plastic wheels rolled and stopped. Outside the window, Manhattan slid past in winter gray. Distant, busy, and unconcerned. Everything sounded and felt the way it was supposed to. The machine was working. Then came the impact. Not a single blow, but a violent stuttering. Bone and feather against steel. Fire flashed past the windows. And then, something far more unsettling than noise followed. Silence. The engines did not sputter. They did not struggle. They stopped. Both of them. In that quiet moment, the plane shifted from modern certainty into something more fragile. Screens flickered. Systems reconfigured. Beneath the aircraft, a small emergency propeller, the ram air turbine, dropped into the rushing air, spinning to provide just enough power to keep essential controls alive. The airplane was no longer flying on strength. It was flying on care. The 3 minutes. From the moment the birds struck the engines to the moment the aircraft met the Hudson River, 208 seconds passed. 3 minutes. In the cockpit, warning lights filled the panels. Alarm sounded. The primary electrical systems faded, replaced by limited emergency power. The aircraft became heavy and quiet, its controls stiff but responsive. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger slowed his breathing, grounding himself in calm. Decades of experience guided his hands, not as instinct alone, but as practiced judgment shaped by years of preparation. Beside him, First Officer Jeffrey Skiles worked the engine restart checklist. It was his first flight on the Airbus A320 since completing training. Only weeks earlier, he had been learning the systems in simulators. Now he was applying that knowledge to engines that could not be saved. The two pilots worked without drama, without wasted words. Experience and fresh knowledge moving together, each trusting the other completely. There were no good options left. Returning to the airport meant crashing into buildings. Diverting toward New Jersey meant falling short and endangering lives on the ground. Every runway was already behind them. The decision was not about success. It was about choosing the safest possible ending. The Hudson River offered that chance. "This is the captain," Sullenberger said calmly over the intercom. "Brace for impact." Inside the cabin. Fear did not arrive as panic. It arrived as clarity. A woman typed a message to her husband, not "I love you," but the moments she hoped she would still have. A child stared quietly at the seat in front of him. A businessman felt the weight of priorities, rearranging themselves in an instant. Strangers became neighbors. Someone helped an elderly woman lean forward. A man offered his coat to another passenger who was shaking. No one asked names. None were needed. The flight attendants moved steadily through the aisle, their voices firm and reassuring. While the pilots guided the aircraft, they guided the people, repeating instructions, offering eye contact, reminding everyone that they were not alone. Brace, heads down, stay down. The cabin became something gentle and collective, a shared effort to be ready. The landing. When the Hudson rose to meet the aircraft, it felt less like a crash than a firm arrival. The plane struck the water and skidded forward, its structure groaning under the weight. For a moment it seemed to pause, as if gathering itself. Then it held. The aircraft stayed together, its rivets strained but faithful. Along the hull, river ice scraped softly against aluminum, a reminder of how close the cold waited beneath them. Water entered the cabin. Doors opened. Warm air vanished. The winter cold arrived quickly but not cruelly. Sharp, honest, unmistakable. Passengers moved onto the wings, their breath visible. The city suddenly very close and very far away at the same time. They were not walking on water. They were standing together. The river answers. The Hudson responded almost immediately. Ferry captains who had witnessed the landing turned their vessels without hesitation. Engines roared, ice broke apart beneath propellers. Lines were thrown and secured, holding the aircraft in place and guiding it toward shallower water. The river became a pathway. Passengers were lifted from the wings. One by one, wrapped in blankets, helped aboard ferries warm with human voices and relief. There was no order except kindness, no urgency except care. Helicopters circled above. Emergency crews waited on shore. The count rose steadily. At 3:55 p.m., the last person was rescued. All 155 were alive. The last walk. Captain Sullenberger remained behind. He walked the cabin once, then again. Water rose around his ankles. The aisle held small traces of ordinary life, a single shoe, a magazine drifting gently, a child's toy resting against a seat. Only when every row was empty did he leave the aircraft. Not triumphant, simply finished. The cold room. Months later, the event was examined carefully. The National Transportation Safety Board asked whether a computer might have done better. Simulations replayed the flight, showing runways that appeared almost reachable. But the computer knew the birds were coming. The pilots did not. The simulation assumed perfection. The pilots lived through surprise. Investigators later determined that a 35-second human reaction time, to recognize failure, to diagnose, to decide, changed everything. When that reality was added, every simulated return failed. The conclusion was clear. The decision to land on the Hudson was the safest possible choice. After the water. Survival changes people quietly. Some passengers carried lingering fear. Others carried new appreciation. Many felt both at once. Life continued, but with a softer awareness of what matters. There was a before, and there was an after. Between them were 3 minutes that revealed the best of human preparation and care. What the miracle really was. The miracle on the Hudson was not that a plane floated. It was that people did. Pilots trusted training. Flight attendants trusted responsibility. Passengers trusted one another. Ferry captains trusted instinct and experience. A city trusted its river. For one winter afternoon, the Hudson, often seen as a boundary, became a shelter. The river did not change, but people did. And sometimes that is what a miracle looks like.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Aviation. Definition: the field or activity related to the design, operation, and flying of aircraft. Example: the miracle on the Hudson is considered one of the most remarkable events in modern aviation. 2. Thrust. Definition: the forward force produced by an aircraft's engines that allows it to move through the air and stay aloft. Example: when both engines lost thrust, the plane could no longer continue flying normally. 3. Stuttering. Definition: happening in short, broken bursts rather than smoothly or continuously. Example: the stuttering impact of the birds against the engines shocked everyone on board. 4. Sputter. Definition: to make weak, uneven sounds or movements, often before stopping completely. Example: the engines did not sputter or fade, they stopped suddenly. 5. A modern certainty. Definition: the feeling of confidence created by advanced technology and systems that people trust to work reliably. Example: passengers relied on modern certainty, believing the aircraft's systems would keep them safe. 6. Reconfigured. Definition: adjusted or rearranged. To operate in a different way, usually automatically. Example: when the engines failed, the aircraft's systems reconfigured to emergency mode. 7. The ram air turbine. Definition: a small emergency turbine that deploys from an aircraft to provide limited power when the main engines fail. Example: the ram air turbine deployed to supply essential electrical and hydraulic power. 8. On care. Definition: operating with minimal resources, relying on careful management rather than full strength or power. Example: with the engines gone, the aircraft was flying on care rather than full capability. 9. Grounding. Definition: a deliberate action used to remain calm, focused, and mentally present during a stressful situation. Example: the captain used grounding techniques to stay calm during the emergency. 10. Diverting. Definition: changing direction from an original route to an alternate location for safety reasons. Example: diverting to a nearby airport was considered but ultimately ruled out. 11. Brace for impact. Definition: a warning instructing people to prepare their bodies for a sudden collision. Example: the captain told the passengers to brace for impact as the plane descended. 12. It arrived as clarity. Definition: a phrase meaning that understanding came suddenly and clearly without confusion. Example: fear arrived as clarity when passengers realized the seriousness of the situation. 13. To skid. Definition: to slide across a surface while moving forward, often with reduced control. Example: the aircraft skidded across the river after touching down. 14. Hull. Definition: the main body or outer shell of a vehicle, especially one that moves on water. Example: ice scraped against the hull as the plane floated in the river. 15. The pilots lived through surprise. Definition: a statement meaning the pilots experienced an unexpected crisis and had to react in real time without warning. Example: the pilots lived through surprise when the engines failed without any prior indication. 16. Lingering. Definition: remaining for a long time after an event has ended, especially in emotions or effects. Example: some passengers experienced lingering fear long after the rescue.
Comprehension questions. 1. What event is described in the article, and when did it occur? Answer: the article describes the miracle on the Hudson, which occurred on January 15, 2009, when U.S. Airways Flight 1549 made an emergency landing in the Hudson River. 2. What caused U.S. Airways Flight 1549 to lose power? Answer: a flock of Canada geese struck both engines shortly after takeoff, causing a total loss of thrust. 3. Why was returning to an airport not a safe option for the pilots? Answer: the aircraft was too low and too far from available runways, and attempting to return would have risked crashing into buildings or populated areas. 4. What is meant by the phrase modern certainty in the article? Answer: it refers to the confidence passengers place in advanced technology and systems, believing they will work reliably and keep them safe. 5. What role did the ram air turbine play during the emergency? Answer: the ram air turbine provided limited emergency power to essential flight controls after the main engines failed. 6. How did Captain Sullenberger remain effective during the crisis? Answer: he used grounding techniques, such as controlled breathing, to stay calm and focused despite extreme pressure. 7. Why is First Officer Jeffrey Skiles' role especially significant? Answer: it was his first flight on the Airbus A320 after completing training, yet he successfully applied his knowledge during a real emergency. 8. What does the article suggest about teamwork in the cockpit? Answer: it shows that experience and newly learned knowledge work together seamlessly, with both pilots trusting each other completely. 9. How did fear affect the passengers inside the cabin? Answer: fear arrived as clarity rather than panic, leading passengers to understand the seriousness of the situation and act cooperatively. 10. What actions did the flight attendants take during the emergency? Answer: they calmly guided passengers, repeated safety instructions, and provided reassurance, helping maintain order and trust. 11. Why is the Hudson River described as liquid concrete? Answer: the phrase emphasizes how hard and dangerous water can be at high speed, highlighting the risk of the landing. 12. How were the passengers rescued after the landing? Answer: nearby ferry boats, tugboats, and other vessels rushed to the scene, rescuing passengers from the wings and the water. 13. Why did Captain Sullenberger walk through the cabin twice after landing? Answer: he wanted to ensure that no passengers were left behind before leaving the aircraft himself. 14. What did the National Transportation Safety Board conclude about the pilot's decision? Answer: the NTSB concluded that landing in the Hudson River was the safest possible choice under the circumstances. 15. What is the deeper meaning of the miracle on the Hudson? According to the article? Answer. The miracle lies not only in the plane's survival, but in human preparation, cooperation, judgment, and care working together under extreme conditions.